The morning air was crisp at the naval base, carrying a strange mix of salt from the ocean and the metallic scent of the ships docked along the pier. Massive warships among the deadliest Earth had ever built rested in silence, their steel hulls gleaming under the pale sunlight. These were not ordinary ships. Each one was a masterpiece of engineering, armed with weapons and defenses that had only been dreamed of a few decades ago. The crews walked along the decks with a sense of pride but also unease, as if they knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Inside the command center of the largest ship, the control room buzzed with activity. Officers and crew members moved with practiced efficiency, checking systems, reviewing maps, and running simulations. Their movements were precise, almost robotic, but there was an underlying tension that no procedure could erase. Everyone could feel it, an unspoken anticipation that something beyond the ordinary was coming their way. Suddenly, a loud alarm broke through the hum of machinery. Red lights flashed across the room, bathing the faces of those inside in a harsh glow. A signal had just arrived, unlike anything the communication officers had seen before. It was urgent, encrypted, and originated from a human settlement far beyond the borders of Earth. For a moment, no one spoke. Eyes met across the room, silently acknowledging that whatever this was, it would change everything. The message was brief, but terrifyingly clear. The colony had encountered a threat so overwhelming that their defenses were collapsing. It was unlike anything recorded in Earth's history. The communication had been sent across light years, bouncing between satellites and relay stations, but the urgency had remained intact. Every second mattered. The commander of the ship, a seasoned officer with decades of experience, studied the message carefully. His face was calm, but his eyes betrayed the weight of the decision before him. He knew the fleet would have to respond immediately. There was no time for hesitation, no room for error. The lives of thousands, both in the colony and aboard the ships, rested on what happened next. As the word spread through the base, a wave of activity erupted. Crews rushed to stations, engineers double-checked weapon systems, and navigators calculated routes across the void of space. Some faces were pale with anxiety, while others showed a determined focus. Conversations were brief and purposeful, everyone speaking in the language of duty and survival. In the midst of it all, some of the younger crew members glanced nervously at the older officers, hoping to find reassurance. On the deck, sailors adjusted equipment and secured loose cargo. The ship's engines, silent for months, began to hum as technicians ran final diagnostics. Each ship in the fleet mirrored the activity of the flagship, creating a synchronized rhythm that seemed almost alive. The fleet was readying itself to leave Earth, to cross unimaginable distances in order to reach the colony. The scale of the mission was staggering. Few had ever traveled so far into the unknown, and even fewer had faced an enemy beyond Earth's experience. Down in the crew quarters, individuals grappled with their own fears. Some stared out at the ocean, watching the sunlight dance on the waves, thinking about loved ones they might never see again. Others studied manuals and drills, trying to distract themselves with work. It was a mixture of pride, anxiety, and determination, a blend that defined every human facing the unknown. Each person knew the risk, yet there was also a quiet sense of honor in being part of something larger than themselves. The fleet's departure was not just a physical journey, it was also a psychological one. The thought of leaving the comfort of Earth, of stepping into a void where help was uncertain, weighed heavily on everyone. Yet even in the face of fear, there was unity. Orders were followed, and every crew member performed their duties without question. It was a dance of preparation and resolve, choreographed by experience and necessity. As the hours passed, the ships began to move. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, the massive vessels left the docks and glided across the waves. The engines roared to life, and the fleet rose from the water like a coordinated armada. Onlookers from the shore watched in awe, realizing that this was not just a military exercise but the beginning of a mission that would echo across worlds. Inside the flagship, the commander stood at the observation deck, looking out at the retreating coastline. His mind raced with strategy and potential outcomes, yet there was a moment of reflection. He thought about the centuries of human progress that had made this mission possible, the ingenuity that had created ships capable of traversing the stars, and the courage of those who would face danger without hesitation. It was a rare moment of quiet before the storm. a time to acknowledge the gravity of what lay ahead. Communication lines were established between ships, ensuring that every vessel in the fleet could act as one cohesive force. Messages flew between commanders, technicians, and navigators, all coordinated with precision. It was a symphony of human skill and technology, each part essential to the survival of the whole. Even the youngest crew members felt the weight of responsibility, understanding that their actions could mean the difference between life and death. As night fell on the planet below, the fleet reached the edge of Earth's atmosphere. The stars stretched endlessly beyond, a reminder of the vast unknown that awaited them. In the quiet of space, the crew had no distractions. No familiar sky, no comforting gravity, just the cold expanse and the distant message of a colony in peril. Yet despite the isolation and danger, there was also hope. Hope born from preparation, from the skill of the crew, and from the belief that humanity could face whatever challenge lay ahead. During the journey to the colony, each crew member found moments to reflect. Some wrote letters to those they might never see again, while others focused on drills, trying to make sure every response was perfect. Laughter was rare, but small conversations kept spirits alive. Bonds formed quickly under such pressure, as strangers became allies and allies became family. The human element of the mission was as critical as the weapons and engines. Without trust, courage, and resilience, the fleet would be nothing more than floating metal. By the time the first light of a distant star reached the fleet, the sense of urgency had intensified. Every officer and sailor understood that the colony's survival depended on them. It was a call to action that resonated in every heart, a reminder that the mission was not about glory or recognition. It was about the lives of others. Each individual carried that knowledge silently but with unwavering determination. And so, with engines burning brightly against the darkness of space, the fleet pressed on. The journey had begun, not just across miles and light years, but into the unknown, where danger awaited and courage would be tested. In the silence of space, far from the comforts of home, humanity's deadliest warships moved forward, answering a call that could not be ignored. The story of their mission, and of those aboard them, was only just beginning. The fleet had left Earth behind, slipping through the black void of space with the hum of powerful engines filling every ship. The crews, though highly trained, felt the weight of the mission more with each passing hour. For many, it was their first time leaving the protective cradle of their home planet. The familiar sun, the soft pull of gravity, even the sound of wind on the ocean. Everything they had known was now millions of kilometers away. Ahead lay the unknown, and the responsibility of protecting a distant human colony pressed heavily on their shoulders. Inside the flagship, the bridge was alive with activity. Officers monitored the trajectory, ensuring the ships remained on course for the colony's location. Communications specialists kept a constant watch on signals, scanning for any signs of trouble. Every system had to function perfectly. A single mistake could mean disaster. Despite the technology, it was still human skill, judgment, and decision-making that would determine their success. The commander walked among the crew, checking on each station personally. He spoke quietly, offering guidance and reassurance, but never sugarcoating the danger. He understood that fear was natural, but confidence and calm were what kept people alive in moments of crisis. Around him, sailors and officers worked in unison, their hands moving quickly over controls, their minds sharp and alert. The atmosphere was tense but focused, a balance of anxiety and determination that defined the mission. Meanwhile, in the living quarters, small groups of crew members tried to find brief moments of comfort. Some studied maps and mission briefings, memorizing every detail about the colony and its environment. Others shared stories of past deployments, trying to lighten the mood with humor or anecdotes. Though the jokes were few, they were important. They reminded the crew that, despite the danger, they were human, capable of hope and connection even in the darkest reaches of space. The journey was long, and space was not kind to patience. Days stretched into nights that never truly came, as the distant stars offered no sense of time. Meals were simple, sleep was limited, and the hum of machinery was a constant presence. Yet the crew adapted. Humans had always been explorers, survivors, and problem solvers. This mission was no different. Each person found ways to endure, to stay sharp, and to support one another. Every action mattered, and every role was vital to the fleet's survival. As the ships moved farther from Earth, unexpected challenges began to appear. Micrometeoroid fields threatened navigation, forcing pilots to make split-second decisions to avoid collisions. Solar flares occasionally erupted, sending waves of radiation that required shields to be recalibrated quickly. The crews faced these dangers calmly, their training transforming potential panic into precise, effective action. In these moments, the human spirit shone brightest, not in reckless heroism, but in steady, reliable courage under pressure. Even with the constant demands of the mission, personal stories emerged. A technician found a way to improve engine efficiency, quietly saving precious fuel that might make the difference in reaching the colony. A navigator noticed a subtle anomaly in the star charts, potentially indicating a hazard ahead. Each small act of insight, unnoticed by many, contributed to the fleet's collective survival. These moments reminded everyone that the mission was not just about machines or orders. It was about people using their minds, hearts and instincts to face the unknown. As days passed, tension built in ways that were almost invisible. Crew members learned to read each other's moods through subtle cues, slight hesitations, clenched jaws, the way eyes avoided contact. The pressure was immense, but it also created bonds. Strangers became friends, friends became family, and the shared goal of saving the colony forged unity stronger than any training exercise could produce. One day, as the fleet navigated near a dense asteroid cluster, a sudden alert rang through the command center. Sensors had picked up an unexpected object, moving in a trajectory that intersected with the fleet's path. Panic flashed briefly across the room, but the officers and crew acted with disciplined precision. Pilots maneuvered ships with expert skill, engineers adjusted shields, and communications officers coordinated every move. The potential for disaster was high, but the fleet avoided it through teamwork, timing, and calm decision-making. This incident reminded everyone of the fragility of life in space. The commander gathered the crew later, not to scold, but to acknowledge their efforts. He reminded them that fear was natural, that mistakes were costly, but that the fleet had passed its first true test. The sense of accomplishment was quiet but profound. Every member felt it, a shared understanding that they could face what lay ahead together. As they continued their journey, the crew also trained relentlessly. Drills simulated scenarios they hoped never to encounter: emergencies, attacks, system failures. Each drill, though repetitive, built muscle memory and confidence. Leaders observed closely, correcting errors, praising ingenuity, and encouraging creative problem-solving. These sessions were exhausting but vital. In the silence of space, preparation was the best weapon they had. Amid all this, communication with Earth was limited. Messages took hours, sometimes days, to reach their destination. Families sent words of encouragement. Earthly leaders offered guidance, but most of the decisions had to be made by the fleet itself. This autonomy weighed on everyone, but it also fostered trust and responsibility. The crew had to rely on themselves, on each other, and on the lessons humanity had learned over centuries of exploration and defense. Despite the challenges, there were small moments of beauty. Crew members would gather near observation windows, staring at distant stars, nebulae, and planets. The vastness of space was humbling, inspiring both awe and reflection. Conversations would sometimes drift to the meaning of their mission, the courage of the colony, and the resilience of humanity. These moments reminded them that they were not just soldiers or technicians. They were witnesses to something extraordinary, part of a story larger than themselves. As the fleet neared the outskirts of the colony system, tension reached a new level. Sensors detected signs of destruction, but the full scale was unclear. The crew prepared for immediate action, double-checking weapons, shields, and navigation. The uncertainty was nerve-wracking, but everyone moved with discipline. Fear was present, but it was tempered by determination. They had trained for this, and now it was time to apply everything they had learned. In these final hours before reaching the colony, personal reflections became more intense. Some crew members thought of the people they might save, imagining faces and lives depending on their success. Others considered the sacrifices that might be required, the possibility that not everyone would return. Even amidst anxiety, there was a quiet sense of honor. They were doing what few could, stepping forward when others might turn away. The commander held a final briefing before entering the colony system. Maps were reviewed, contingencies were discussed, and roles were clarified. Every officer understood their responsibility. Every crew member knew the stakes. The fleet was ready, not just as machines of war, but as a collective of human minds and hearts working toward a single goal. And then, as the first glimpses of the colony appeared on the screens, a hush fell over the command center. The settlement was there, battered but standing. Smoke rose from damaged structures. Lights flickered in the darkness, and movement suggested that survivors still clung to life. The reality of the situation hit everyone with full force. The danger was real, the enemy unknown, and the mission more critical than ever. The fleet moved forward with careful precision, engines humming, weapons ready, and minds focused. The journey had been long and challenging, but the most dangerous part was just beginning. In the stillness of space far from home, the human element, the courage, skill, and determination of each crew member, would be the difference between survival and disaster. The story of Earth's deadliest warships responding to a call that echoed across worlds was far from over, and every person aboard knew it.
The fleet had entered the outskirts of the colony's star system. For days, the crews had been on high alert, scanning the empty blackness of space for any signs of danger. Now, the tension had grown into something almost tangible, pressing on everyone like the weight of a storm cloud. Even the most experienced officers moved with a sharper awareness, and the younger crew members felt a mixture of awe and fear as they stared at the strange world spinning in the distance. Space was vast and silent, but it was never empty. Sensors picked up asteroid fields, drifting debris, and strange energy signatures that made the crew tighten their grips on their consoles. Each new blip could mean a natural hazard, or it could be something far more dangerous. The unknown had always been humanity's greatest challenge, and now it seemed to wait for them, patient and relentless. Inside the flagship, the commander moved from station to station, watching every detail. He spoke with calm authority, guiding the crew without hiding the truth. Stay alert. Nothing here is ordinary. Trust your instincts, follow your training, and work together, he said quietly. But the words carried weight. Each officer understood the importance of remaining focused, even as curiosity and fear competed for attention. The crew had settled into a rhythm, balancing vigilance with the long stretches of quiet that space demanded. Some spent hours reviewing tactical plans, while others monitored communications or checked engineering systems. There were small breaks, moments to stretch legs or share a quiet conversation, but the sense of urgency never left the bridge. Every decision, every observation could have consequences far beyond their understanding. One of the young officers noticed a faint disturbance on the sensors. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, a ripple in the energy readings that did not match any known phenomenon. The officer alerted the team and a discussion began. Could it be a natural anomaly or something artificial? The possibility that the enemy was near filled the room with a tense energy. Every crew member felt it, a mixture of fear and determination. As the fleet moved closer, strange phenomena became more frequent. Unusual bursts of light appeared in the distance, moving unpredictably. Instruments occasionally failed without explanation, forcing engineers to improvise solutions. These small incidents, though not immediately dangerous, reminded the crew that space was a place where even the smallest mistake could be deadly. It also reminded them that human skill, adaptability, and quick thinking were just as important as technology. In the living quarters, crew members tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. Some wrote notes to loved ones, knowing that messages might take years to reach Earth. Others shared stories from home, laughing quietly to keep spirits up. The bond between crew members grew stronger with every passing day. They relied on each other not just for survival, but for emotional support, understanding that trust and friendship could be the difference between despair and courage. The journey also gave space for reflection. Many crew members thought about the colony they were rushing to protect. They imagined the people there, families, children, and workers struggling to maintain life on a harsh, distant planet. Each person aboard felt a growing responsibility. Their mission was not just about duty or pride. It was about protecting humanity itself, preserving lives that could not defend themselves. Suddenly, a warning siren echoed through the flagship. The sensors had detected movement. At first, it was unclear what it was, just a small, flickering energy signature far away, but the tension in the command room was immediate. Everyone knew that even a tiny signal could indicate a massive threat. The commander quickly ordered all ships to increase formation spacing and prepare defensive systems. Weapons were powered up, shields were reinforced, and every crew member took their position. For hours, the fleet remained on edge, scanning for the source. The unknown presence seemed to follow them at a distance, shifting and disappearing like a shadow. The psychological toll was heavy. Crew members worked tirelessly, their nerves stretched thin by constant vigilance. Even small mistakes were magnified, and yet, despite exhaustion and fear, they remained steadfast. This was not the first time humans had faced danger, but it was the first time they faced an enemy so unfamiliar, so distant from Earth. In the mess hall, quieter conversations revealed personal thoughts. A technician admitted to a fellow crew member that he had always dreamed of space exploration, but he had never imagined it would feel like this. So isolating, so overwhelming, yet so meaningful. Another crew member spoke of the pride in being part of something bigger than themselves, knowing that their actions might save hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. These moments of vulnerability strengthened bonds, reminding everyone that courage was often born from honesty and trust. Days passed with little change, but the crew never relaxed. The ripple in the sensors persisted, sometimes near, sometimes far, never predictable. Engineers improvised methods to improve detection systems, while navigators adjusted routes to avoid natural hazards while maintaining speed toward the colony. Each successful maneuver built confidence, but also heightened anticipation. The unknown was out there, waiting, and everyone knew that when it revealed itself fully, the fleet had to be ready. One evening, as distant stars cast faint light through observation windows, a young officer whispered to a comrade, "Do you think we're ready?" The other smiled faintly, though tension showed in their eyes. "We have to be," they replied. "There's no turning back now." In that moment, the reality of their mission became crystal clear. They were pioneers, protectors, and warriors all at once. Every skill they had learned, every decision they made, mattered. The commander, observing quietly, understood the importance of these human moments. Technology and weapons could only go so far. It was the resilience, focus, and courage of each crew member that would decide the outcome. He moved from station to station, offering encouragement, reminders, and sometimes simply presence. His calm demeanor helped to steady the nerves of those who felt fear creeping in, reinforcing the idea that leadership was more than orders, it was inspiration. As the fleet entered a particularly dense asteroid belt, tensions spiked. Sensors went haywire and debris moved unpredictably. Pilots maneuvered with precision, narrowly avoiding collisions. Shields flared under small impacts, engines strained against gravitational pulls, and the entire fleet seemed to move as one living organism, responding to the challenge with instinct and coordination. The danger was constant, but the crew's performance was flawless. Each person understood their role, and the bonds of teamwork kept the fleet alive. During a rare quiet moment, one officer reflected on what lay ahead. The enemy, whatever it was, had not revealed itself fully. The ripple in the sensors was just a hint, a shadow of the threat. Yet for the first time, there was a sense of determination that surpassed fear. The unknown, though terrifying, could be faced with skill, preparation, and human resilience. Every crew member knew it deep in their hearts. The mission was far from over, and the real test was yet to come. By the time the fleet reached the inner edge of the colony's system, signs of life or signs of struggle appeared. Small settlements were visible on distant planets and moons, lights flickering as if signaling survival against overwhelming odds. Smoke and debris suggested recent attacks, confirming what the urgent messages had warned them. The fleet slowed, cautiously scanning every detail. For the first time, the enemy was near, and the calm of the journey was gone. The crews took their positions, weapons ready, hearts steady but tense. Engineers performed final checks, ensuring every system would function under attack. Navigators plotted routes that balanced speed with safety. Officers communicated quietly but efficiently, each word carrying meaning. The anticipation was almost unbearable, yet everyone worked as if they had done this 1,000 times. The unknown enemy loomed, and the fleet had to be ready for anything. And in the silence of space, as the stars stretched endlessly around them, the crews of Earth's deadliest warships understood one truth. They had traveled far, faced countless challenges, and survived the unknown. But the real test the battle to protect humanity was only beginning. Their courage, skill, and unity would be tested like never before. The ripple in the sensors, once a faint anomaly, now felt like a heartbeat, a sign that the enemy was near and that history was about to be written in the cold expanse of the stars.
The fleet had finally arrived at the heart of the colony's system. The view on the observation screens was sobering. Cities that had once been thriving were now scarred with damage. Smoke rose from buildings and faint flickers of light indicated that people were still clinging to life. The sheer scale of the destruction made a heavy silence fall over the command bridge. Every crew member understood immediately. This was worse than anyone had anticipated. The commander stood quietly, studying the visuals. He didn't need words to convey the gravity of the situation. Every officer and sailor could feel it. The colony was vulnerable and time was no longer on their side. Orders were given quickly but calmly. Each ship in the fleet moved into position, creating a protective formation around the settlement. It was a display of both power and precision, a silent promise to the people below that help had arrived. Even before the enemy revealed itself fully, tension was high. Sensors detected movement, shadows that moved with unnatural speed, energy signatures that were foreign to every system aboard the fleet. The officers studied the readings carefully, trying to predict the enemy's next move. Every possibility was considered, every contingency planned. Yet despite preparation, there was no certainty. The unknown enemy had advantages that humans had never faced before. The first contact came suddenly. A wave of energy shot across the system, striking one of the outer ships. The shields flared, absorbing the impact, but the blast sent a shudder through the vessel. Alarms rang across the fleet as the crew scrambled to respond. Engineers worked frantically to stabilize systems. Pilots adjusted positions and officers coordinated countermeasures. For a moment, chaos threatened to overwhelm the calm efficiency of the fleet, but discipline and training quickly restored order. The enemy was unlike anything they had ever faced. Fast, intelligent, and unpredictable, it seemed to anticipate the fleet's movements. Yet despite the fear, determination shone brighter. Every crew member knew that they could not retreat. The colony depended on them. They had trained for situations like this, and now their preparation, courage, and unity were being tested in ways they had only imagined in simulations. Amid the chaos, individual acts of bravery emerged. A navigator noticed a weakness in the enemy's approach and relayed the information to the command center, allowing a precise counterattack. A group of engineers manually rerouted power to damaged shields, risking exposure to radiation in the process. Every person played a role, and their contributions, though small individually, combined to form a coordinated defense that kept the fleet alive. The colony below was in turmoil. Communications relayed frightened voices, desperate pleas, and reports of survivors hiding among debris. The fleet's arrival brought hope, but it also brought urgency. People needed immediate evacuation, medical aid, and protection. The crew of the flagship coordinated with smaller transport ships, establishing safe corridors while keeping the enemy at bay. It was a delicate balance of defense and rescue, requiring split-second decisions and complete trust in each other's abilities. Time stretched painfully. Hours passed, each filled with bursts of action and moments of tense waiting. Crew members rotated tirelessly, some managing weapons, others piloting ships, and others repairing damaged systems. The intensity was relentless, but the human element, the focus, courage, and ingenuity of each individual, kept the fleet operational. Despite fear and exhaustion, they moved as one, every action reinforcing the strength of unity. Outside, the enemy continued its assault, testing the fleet's limits. Energy blasts, rapid maneuvers, and unpredictable attacks forced the crew to adapt constantly. No one had faced such a combination of speed and intelligence before. The enemy seemed to learn from every move, challenging the fleet in ways that simulations could never replicate. Yet for all its power, the enemy could not break the human spirit. Every counterattack, every tactical adjustment was a reminder that training and courage were formidable weapons in their own right. In quieter moments, the human cost became apparent. Reports came in of settlements that could not be reached in time, of people lost to the enemy's attacks. Crew members felt the weight of these losses, mourning silently while continuing their work. It was a stark reminder that bravery and skill were not always enough to prevent tragedy. Yet these moments also strengthened resolve. Each loss fueled determination, inspiring the crew to fight harder and protect those still in danger. Amid the chaos, small gestures of humanity emerged. A medic reassured terrified survivors, calming children and aiding the injured despite limited resources. A young officer helped an older engineer repair a damaged system, sharing knowledge and support. Even in the midst of battle, these acts reminded everyone that humanity was more than technology and weapons. It was compassion, trust, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. As the battle continued, the fleet began to gain ground. Coordinated attacks exploited weaknesses in the enemy's formation, pushing it back from key settlements. The energy shields of the ships held steady, thanks to the ingenuity and bravery of the crew. Engineers worked tirelessly, repairing damage as it occurred, while navigators calculated every maneuver with precision. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The commander remained calm, guiding the fleet with quiet authority. He understood that panic could spread as easily as courage, and his presence reassured the crew. Every order was clear, precise, and focused on protecting life. He observed the actions of his team, silently acknowledging their skill and bravery. It was a reminder that leadership was not just about strategy. It was about inspiring confidence, calm, and determination in others. Despite progress, the danger was far from over. The enemy adapted, changing tactics with speed and intelligence. Every advance by the fleet was met with counterattacks, keeping the crews on edge. Yet even in the face of this relentless pressure, the human spirit prevailed. Teamwork, skill, and unwavering determination allowed the fleet to protect the colony, proving that courage and preparation could overcome even the most unexpected threats. As the sun of the distant star rose over the battered settlements, a moment of calm emerged. The immediate threat had been pushed back, though danger still lingered. The crew took stock of their achievements and losses, tending to the wounded and repairing damaged systems. The human element, resilience, compassion, and courage was what had carried them through. Every person aboard had played a role, and together they had prevented a disaster that could have been catastrophic. The commander addressed the crew. His voice was calm but filled with pride. "We have faced the enemy and protected the colony. This is only the beginning, but today we have shown what humanity is capable of. Remember the lives you saved, the courage you showed, and the teamwork that made it possible." Every crew member felt a sense of accomplishment, a quiet pride that came not from victory alone, but from doing everything possible to protect others. As night fell over the colony, the fleet remained vigilant. The enemy might return and new challenges were sure to arise. Yet in that moment there was hope. The people of the colony could begin to rebuild, and the fleet had proven that humanity could face even the most terrifying threats beyond Earth. The experience had tested them in ways that no training could replicate, and yet, it had also revealed the strength, courage, and resilience that made humans remarkable. For the crew, the mission had become more than duty. It was a testament to the power of preparation, skill, and unity. Each individual had contributed in ways both visible and unseen, and together they had turned the tide against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. The lessons learned, the bonds formed, and the lives saved would remain with them forever. And so, as the fleet maintained its watch over the colony, ready for whatever might come next, the story of Earth's deadliest warships continued. They had arrived when the call echoed across worlds, and through courage, skill, and determination, they had made a difference. The battle had been won, but the mission and the human spirit would carry on, ever vigilant in the vast and uncertain expanse of space. The battle around the colony had slowed, but the tension in the fleet remained high. The enemy had been pushed back, but it was far from defeated. Every crew member knew that another attack could come at any moment, and they prepared as if the next strike was already on the horizon. The commander gathered his officers for a meeting, their faces serious, their minds focused. Maps of the colony and surrounding space were spread across the table. The enemy's movements had been studied carefully, patterns noted, weaknesses identified. The officers discussed strategies, weighing the risks of aggressive attacks against the need to protect civilians and the ships themselves. Every plan considered the human cost, not just the tactical advantage. This was not a game. The lives of thousands depended on their decisions. The fleet was ready to act, But the enemy had advantages that made every decision difficult. It moved quickly, striking unpredictably, and appeared to learn from the fleet's tactics. Yet human ingenuity had one advantage the enemy could not predict: creativity and adaptability. The commander relied on the instincts and experience of his crew, trusting that together they could find a way to turn the tide. Individual acts of bravery began to define the mission. A pilot maneuvered a smaller ship through enemy fire to create a distraction, allowing larger vessels to strike from safer angles. An engineer worked tirelessly to upgrade a weapons system in the middle of combat, making it more efficient and accurate. Each action, while small on its own, contributed to a larger strategy, demonstrating that courage and skill were as important as raw power. The crew also faced personal challenges. Fatigue, fear, and uncertainty were constant companions. Some struggled with memories of past missions, wondering if they would survive this one. Others faced the weight of responsibility for the lives of the colony below. Yet even in the face of exhaustion, humans proved resilient. They found strength in teamwork, in shared purpose, and in the knowledge that they were doing something meaningful. As the fleet executed a coordinated plan, the enemy responded with renewed ferocity. Energy blasts lit up the darkness of space, striking ships and sending vibrations through their hulls. Alarms rang constantly, and crew members moved quickly from station to station, performing repairs, adjusting shields, and firing weapons. The chaos was immense, but discipline and training kept everyone focused. Panic had no place here. Survival depended on calm, deliberate action. During a particularly intense moment, a young officer noticed a pattern in the enemy's movements. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it suggested a vulnerability in the attack formation. The officer relayed the observation to the commander, who quickly adjusted the fleet's strategy. The small insight allowed a larger strike to succeed, damaging enemy vessels and forcing a retreat. It was a reminder that even the smallest observation could change the course of the battle. Meanwhile, on the colony, the people watched the fleet's actions with hope and fear. Messages from civilians were relayed to the flagship, some frantic, some thankful. The crew responded to every message, coordinating evacuations, providing instructions, and reassuring those in danger. The human connection was immediate and powerful. Every action was more than a military maneuver. It was an effort to save lives, to protect families, and to maintain hope in a time of terror. As the battle wore on, the fleet began to gain the upper hand. Coordinated strikes, precise maneuvers, and the relentless courage of every crew member pushed the enemy back. Systems that had been damaged were repaired quickly, thanks to the ingenuity and tireless work of engineers. Pilots and navigators adapted to every new challenge, using creativity and skill to outmaneuver a foe that seemed nearly unbeatable. Despite progress, the crew could not afford to relax. Every victory carried a cost. Every moment of success was paired with exhaustion and tension. Crew members comforted each other in quiet moments, sharing words of encouragement or simply a steady presence. These small acts of humanity were vital, reminding everyone that courage was not just about action but also about compassion, trust, and resilience. In the heat of battle, heroic acts continued to emerge. A medic ran through dangerous debris fields to reach wounded civilians, stabilizing them long enough for evacuation. A weapons officer manually recalibrated a system that had failed under enemy fire, saving a ship from destruction. Every individual acted with awareness that their courage could make the difference between life and death. The human element, the skill, bravery, and compassion of each crew member, proved to be the fleet's most powerful weapon. As the enemy weakened, the commander made a decisive call. The fleet would execute a bold maneuver designed to neutralize the threat completely. Every officer and sailor understood their role. Timing, precision, and courage would determine the outcome. There was no margin for error. The strategy was risky, but the human spirit combined with training and experience gave the fleet a chance to succeed where machines alone could not. The maneuver was executed with perfect coordination. Ships moved in synchrony, weapons fired with calculated accuracy, and the enemy's defenses were overwhelmed. For a moment, silence fell over the fleet as the impact of their actions became clear. The enemy, intelligent and relentless, was finally retreating. The battle had turned thanks to courage, ingenuity, and the unity of the crew. Even as relief began to settle in, the human cost was evident. Damage to ships, exhausted crews, and the lives lost in the colony reminded everyone that victory was never free. Yet the determination of the crew remained strong. They had faced one of humanity's greatest challenges beyond Earth and emerged alive, proving that preparation, skill, and courage could overcome even the most formidable adversary. In the aftermath of the battle, the fleet focused on recovery and support. Systems were repaired, injured crew members were treated, and communications with the colony were strengthened. The people below began to rebuild, their hope renewed by the presence of the fleet. Every action by the crew had ripple effects, restoring confidence and security to those who had faced unimaginable danger. During a quiet moment on the flagship, the commander reflected on the events. He thought of the bravery displayed, the sacrifices made, and the resilience shown by every member of the fleet. Leadership, he knew, was not just about giving orders, but about inspiring trust, calm, and courage. Every crew member had risen to the challenge, demonstrating that humans, when united, were capable of extraordinary feats. Messages from Earth finally reached the fleet, congratulating them on their efforts. Yet the crew knew that praise was less important than the lives saved and the mission accomplished. Each member felt a quiet pride, knowing that their courage, skill, and determination had made a real difference. They had faced the unknown, adapted, and succeeded. As the fleet maintained its watch over the colony, preparing for any further threats, the crews reflected on what they had learned. The enemy had been powerful, relentless, and unpredictable, but human ingenuity, teamwork, and courage had triumphed. The lessons would remain with them, shaping future missions and reinforcing the belief that humanity could face any challenge with skill, preparation, and unity, and so the fleet, weary but resolute, continued its vigil. The battle had been hard, but the human spirit had proven stronger than fear or uncertainty. Every officer, sailor, engineer, medic, and pilot had played a role in turning the tide. Their courage, compassion, and determination had not only protected the colony but had also shown that humanity's deadliest warships were more than machines. They were extensions of human skill, bravery, and heart. The story of this turning point would be remembered, not just for the battle itself but for the human qualities that had won it. Courage, unity, and ingenuity had faced the unknown and emerged victorious, proving that even in the darkest corners of space, humans could shine brightest.
The battle had ended, but the work for the fleet was far from over. The colony lay in ruins, scarred by the enemy's attack and the conflict that had followed. Smoke still rose from damaged buildings, and the faint flicker of lights revealed people struggling to survive. The sight weighed heavily on every crew member. They had come to fight, to protect, and to save lives. But the reality of destruction reminded them that even victory had a cost. Inside the flagship, the commander moved among the crew, checking on systems, ensuring that repairs were proceeding efficiently, and speaking quietly to officers. He understood that leadership was more than giving orders. It was about empathy, encouragement, and support. The crews had faced the unknown, risked their lives, and saved thousands, and he made sure they knew their efforts were seen and valued. The engineers worked tirelessly, repairing the damage sustained during the battle. Shields had been stressed to their limits, weapon systems strained under continuous use, and engines had been pushed beyond safe operating thresholds. Every repair was critical, and every crew member worked with focus and determination. Even in exhaustion, there was a quiet pride in the precision and skill that kept the fleet operational. Meanwhile, smaller teams were dispatched to the colony itself. They moved carefully among the ruins, rescuing civilians trapped in collapsed structures, stabilizing those who were injured, and providing immediate aid. Medics worked tirelessly, often in dangerous conditions, their hands steady as they treated wounds, comforted the frightened, and reassured those who had lost everything. These acts of compassion reminded everyone that heroism was not only in combat, but also in care and protection. The people of the colony looked upon the fleet with gratitude and awe. Messages of thanks were relayed to the flagship, and voices full of relief and emotion reached the crew. For many, these messages were deeply moving, confirming that their actions had real consequences. They had come to protect, to intervene in a desperate moment, and their presence had made a difference. The human connection, the understanding that every life mattered, was as powerful as any weapon aboard the fleet. As the immediate crisis subsided, the commander gathered his officers for a debriefing. They reviewed what had occurred, analyzing decisions, actions, and outcomes. Every lesson was recorded, every success and mistake discussed. The aim was not criticism, but understanding, preparing for future missions, ensuring that the fleet could respond even more effectively if needed. It was a reminder that preparation and reflection were as important as courage and skill. In quieter moments, the crew reflected on their own experiences. Many had faced fear and uncertainty in ways they had never imagined. Some had acted heroically, others had discovered strengths within themselves that they had not known existed. Each individual carried memories of the struggle, the danger, and the human resilience they had witnessed. These reflections strengthened bonds among the crew, a shared understanding of what they had endured and accomplished together. The commander understood the importance of these reflections. Leadership was not just about strategy, but about helping people process experiences, recognize their efforts, and grow stronger from challenges faced. He moved among the crew quietly, offering words of encouragement and reassurance. The human element, the emotional, psychological, and moral dimensions of service, was just as critical as technical skill and tactical ability. Repairs to the colony were underway. Teams worked to restore basic utilities, clear debris, and provide food and medical supplies. The fleet coordinated with local leaders, helping to rebuild infrastructure while maintaining security. Every action, no matter how small, contributed to restoring hope and stability. The crew felt satisfaction in their work, understanding that protection and support were ongoing responsibilities, not just temporary interventions. During this period, the crew also took time to honor those who had been lost. Even in a battle where the enemy had been repelled, not all had survived. Names were remembered, stories told, and the sacrifices acknowledged. The act of remembrance reinforced the human bonds within the fleet, reminding everyone that courage often required personal risk, and that every life mattered. The enemy had retreated, but vigilance remained essential. The fleet maintained a presence in the system, scanning for signs of return, securing escape routes for civilians, and ensuring that the colony could rebuild safely. Every member of the crew understood that the mission was not simply about winning a battle, but about sustaining life and hope in a fragile, distant world. As the days passed, a sense of calm began to return. The immediate threat was gone, and people could begin to rebuild their lives. Yet the crew remained alert, aware that space was unpredictable, and danger could reappear without warning. Their training, experience, and unity had carried them through the most difficult moments, and these qualities would continue to guide them in the days ahead. In quiet moments, crew members found ways to connect with each other and with the world they had protected. Letters were written, messages sent to loved ones, and small gatherings offered respite from the tension and exhaustion. Even in the vast emptiness of space, human connection provided comfort and strength. Bonds formed in battle endured, becoming a source of support for the challenges yet to come. The commander addressed the fleet one final time before leaving the system. His words were calm, reflective, and filled with gratitude. He praised the courage, skill, and humanity of every crew member. He reminded them that their actions had saved lives, inspired hope, and demonstrated the strength of human unity. The fleet had answered a call that echoed across worlds, and in doing so, they had proved that courage and compassion could triumph over even the most formidable challenges. As the fleet departed the colony system, the survivors watched with hope and gratitude. The presence of the warships had not only protected them from immediate danger, but had also offered reassurance that humanity could endure and adapt, even across vast distances and in the face of extraordinary threats. The actions of the crew left a lasting impression, shaping the future of the colony and providing a model of bravery, skill, and care for generations to come. Back aboard the flagship, the commander reflected quietly on the journey. The mission had been perilous, filled with danger, uncertainty, and sacrifice. Yet it had also been a testament to the strength of human ingenuity, courage, and unity. Every crew member had played a part, and together they had faced the unknown and prevailed. The lessons learned would guide future missions, but more importantly, they had shown what humanity could achieve when it worked together. Even as the fleet moved farther from the colony, the human spirit endured. Crew members continued to care for each other, to reflect on their experiences, and to prepare for the challenges that would inevitably arise. The mission was a reminder that bravery was not simply about confronting danger, but about resilience, empathy, and unwavering commitment to others. The legacy of the fleet's mission would not be measured only in tactical victories or enemy defeats. It would be remembered for the lives saved, the hope restored, and the courage displayed by every individual. From engineers to medics, pilots to navigators, each person's contribution mattered. Together, they had turned a desperate situation into a story of survival, skill, and human strength. In the quiet of space, far from Earth and the colony, the fleet continued its journey. Yet the memory of the mission remained vivid in the minds of every crew member. The challenge they had faced, the dangers they had overcome, and the lives they had protected were a lasting testament to human resilience. They had answered a call that echoed across worlds, proving that courage, skill, and unity could overcome even the most extraordinary challenges. And as they sailed through the stars, every member of the fleet knew that this mission, though concluded, had forever changed them. They had seen humanity at its most vulnerable and at its strongest. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and destruction, yet emerged with hope and purpose intact. The story of Earth's deadliest warships responding to a call that echoed across worlds was complete, but its lessons, and the spirit of those who had served, would continue to inspire for generations to come. The fleet would eventually return to Earth, carrying stories of courage, determination, and human resilience. The experiences of the mission would be recorded, studied, and remembered. The knowledge gained would strengthen future defenses, inform new strategies, and honor the sacrifices of those who had risked everything. Most importantly, it would remind humanity that even in the vast, dangerous expanse of space, courage, compassion, and unity could prevail. As the stars stretched endlessly around the fleet, the crews reflected on their journey. They had traveled farther than most could imagine, faced enemies beyond human comprehension, and protected lives that could not defend themselves. Through it all, the human spirit had endured. Every person had contributed to a mission larger than themselves, and together, they had proven that even the darkest challenges could be met with light, skill, and unwavering resolve. The mission had begun with a call from the colony, a desperate plea for help that reached across the void of space. It had ended with hope restored, lives saved, and humanity's courage affirmed. The fleet and every individual aboard had answered with